This is the story of Jeffrey Clark, a man who now faces murder charges in Macomb County, Michigan. On July 4, 2022, 33-year-old Jeffrey was accused of fatally shooting Robertson in cold blood. During his court appearance, Clark was charged with first-degree premeditated murder.
In court, charged with, among other things, first-degree premeditated murder. He allegedly killed Robertson in cold blood very early July 4th.
Among other serious offenses. The prosecution brought a key witness to the stand, who recounted the chilling events leading up to the crime. According to the witness, Clark had threatened to kill him if he ever spoke out. The witness went on to describe how Robertson had pleaded for his life before being mercilessly shot. The only thing Clark seemed concerned about was the fact that he was on a tether at the time. A video of the shooting was shown in court. But mere seconds into it, chaos erupted. Robertson's twin brother, unable to contain his emotions, lashed out at Clark, the man who had killed his brother. Eventually, the brother was restrained, but the emotional toll was clear. In the end, Jeffrey Clark was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. This incident is not an isolated one. Over the years, many grieving loved ones have lost control in court. A similar case occurred with 30-year-old Jayan Forrest, who was in court for murder on September 16, 2013. Forrest had fatally assaulted his grandfather before reporting the crime to the police. The courtroom was filled with family members during his bond hearing, and tensions ran high. Despite the judge's efforts to maintain order, emotions spilled over when Detective Williams began his testimony. The judge warned the courtroom against any further outbursts, but one woman was unable to hold back her grief and anger. She was eventually removed from the courtroom after a heated exchange.
I know this is hard. Step outside or I'm gonna hold you all in contempt. Go! I'm gonna clear the courtroom. Everyone step outside for a second. I want the attorneys to approach. Everyone is excused at this time.
The situation escalated even further outside the courtroom, with family members clashing with each other and the deputies. Despite the chaos, Jayan Forrest was eventually held on a $250,000 bond. Courtrooms have seen their fair share of dramatic outbursts. Take, for example, the case of Eric Mula, who was in court for assault and murder on July 29, 2015. Mula had assaulted Lee Antoine and fatally stabbed his niece, Taisha Mula. Lee, who was in court for an unrelated crime, was called as a witness, but he had other plans. Tensions quickly escalated, and police had to intervene to stabilize the situation.
Other plans.
Stay here! Stay here! Back up, sir! Sir, back up!
Take him out. Take him out of the
Calm down, baby. Calm down.
In the end, Lee was sentenced to 11 months and 29 days, while Eric Mulla was sentenced to 6 years in prison after the murder charge was reduced to manslaughter. In another jaw-dropping courtroom scene, 33-year-old Zarius Platt faced charges for murdering his 26-year-old pregnant wife in Georgia. During the court proceedings, Gerald Carter, the victim's brother, couldn't hold back his emotions and yelled, "Kill him," at Platt. Fortunately, deputies were quick to remove Zarius from the courtroom, though the brother had to be restrained as well. Despite the intense emotions, Zarius was eventually sentenced to 2 life sentences for his crime. Yet another case involves Ryan Burge, who was in court for murdering his girlfriend's 5-year-old daughter, Hartley Anderson. The police accused Burge of causing severe head trauma to Hartley, who eventually died in the hospital.
Police accused him of murdering her while mom Natasha was at work. She came home, found Hartley unconscious, and called 911.
Paramedics were called, and when police arrived, they found Hartley unconscious with severe head trauma. Burge initially told them she hurt herself after throwing a tantrum, but her injuries were so bad she died at the hospital.
Burge initially claimed that Hartley had injured herself during a tantrum, but the severity of her injuries told a different story. As the court proceedings began, Hartley's family members couldn't contain their grief. Her father, Peter Anderson, was particularly emotional and had to be restrained and led away. The situation was so intense that Hartley's mother collapsed. In the end, Ryan Burge was sentenced to 40 years in prison. The case of Vashon Flowers is another example of courtroom drama. Vashon was facing charges for the murder of his wife, Jamie Thomas Flowers, in Michigan on May 19, 2019. During the court proceedings, Jamie's son, London Thomas, made it clear how he felt about Vashon.
Continues to inch forward, and it takes every ounce of strength from all of these deputies to keep inching him backward. And it was a struggle.
The police had to intervene to prevent an altercation, but London's anger was palpable. Vashon was eventually sentenced to life imprisonment. The courtroom can be a place of intense emotions, as seen in the case of Jose Santiago, who faced charges for murdering his girlfriend, Jessica Roas. Hours after Jessica celebrated her 25th birthday, Santiago fatally stabbed her.
Stabbing and killing his girlfriend hours after she celebrated her 25th birthday.
When he entered the courtroom, Jessica's family members were visibly distraught. Despite the police's efforts to maintain order, the family's emotions boiled over. In the end, Jose Santiago was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Perhaps one of the most shocking cases of courtroom violence involves Deshaun Brown, who faced charges for double homicide in Ohio in December 2020. Brown had fatally stabbed Entia Lattimore and her young son, Neo Lattimore, after accusing Entia of killing their unborn baby.
Brown were expecting a baby earlier in the year, but Lattimore suffered a miscarriage.
He thought that she killed their baby, and he was going to do something to her baby, Nilo.
She said phone records show Brown ordered a body bag on eBay, delivered to him one day before a security guard discovered the mother stabbed to death inside a body bag near the Purple People Bridge.
The details of the crime were horrifying, with Brown even purchasing a body bag on eBay before carrying out the murders. During the court hearing, Neo's father approached Deshaun for a confrontation, but the police quickly intervened. Despite being restrained, Neo's father continued to express his anger and grief. The case is still ongoing, with Deshaun Brown awaiting his final sentence. Another unforgettable incident involves Frank DeLon Jr., who faced charges for murdering his ex-girlfriend Diamond in 2023. After Diamond broke up with him, Frank fatally shot her. In court, Diamond's grieving mother addressed Frank, who shockingly smirked during the proceedings. The situation quickly escalated, and deputies had to intervene to restore order. Frank was ultimately sentenced to 45 years in prison. Finally, there's the case of James Henderson, who committed one of the most heinous crimes imaginable. In November 2014, James fatally shot 5 people, including a pregnant woman, in a shocking act of violence.
A gunman last November shot and killed 3 others inside this house, 2 men and a 17-year-old girl. Minutes later, that girl's mom, Sharita Johnson, and her unborn son were killed.
Please help us find the person who did this. Please. None of them deserve this.
The prosecutor detailed the horrific nature of his crimes in court, and the victims' loved ones were given the opportunity to speak. The brother of the murdered pregnant woman spoke emotionally about the loss of his sister, but he eventually broke down and had to be restrained. The courtroom was filled with grief and anger, with several family members struggling to contain their emotions. Despite the chaos, James Henderson was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. These cases highlight the intense emotions that often accompany murder trials, where the grief and anger of the victims' families can sometimes boil over, leading to dramatic and heartbreaking scenes in the courtroom.